Welcome back to A Story to Tell from the campus of Dixie State University. It's good to have you back with us. We're talking today with Michael and Annette Sly. Is that right?
That's right.
Well, tell me about yourselves. Start a little this side of heaven and tell me what happened.
Well, I think I'll maybe start, since my wife's here with me, kind of where we're at. We met after a mission.
Where did you go on your mission?
I went to the Virginia Roanoke mission.
Did you go on a mission?
I did not, no. I just met him soon after he'd been home for 3 months. And we met, and within 7 days and 5 dates, we were engaged and married 2 months later.
2 months?
Mm-hmm.
After you met?
Mm-hmm.
That's almost the record.
No, I think our kids have it beat.
Do they?
They met, he met his wife on his mission, and he came home, and 4 days later they had been Facebooking and talking, and he went back, and within, I think, a week of being there, they were engaged and married 6 weeks later.
But they knew each other in the mission field.
For a little bit, the very last section.
Well, that's okay then. I know a guy that met his wife and was married 3 weeks later in the Salt Lake Temple by Marion D. Hanks.
There you go. They have us beat.
Do you want to know who that was?
Who?
My wife and her husband.
Uh-huh.
Well, tell me where you were born, where you were raised,
Actually,
what happened?
I was born in Kentucky. My father was in the Army, the 101st Airborne, and he was there right during the Vietnam era. And so that's where I was born, lived there about a year, and then kind of moved all over. But I went to high school at Alta High School up north in Sandy, Utah. And then from there was in the Air Force Reserves and had a break in service, like I said, to serve a mission. And then came back from the mission, and then met my beautiful wife at a dance. And
Was it a singles dance?
it was a young adult dance.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
That's okay.
So we just met at the dance, and then the rest kind of was history from
He told
there.
me what his last name was, and I said, no way. He said, yeah, it really is Sly. And I said, show me your driver's license. So he did. And I married him anyway. He said, no, Sly's a really cool name. The kids won't get teased at school because Sly's a cool name. So.
Wasn't some famous, the nickname of some famous movie star Sly?
Well, they had
Stallone.
Sly as a nickname, and then of course I always heard Sly and the Family Stone, the old group there.
Mm-hmm.
But our descendants come from England, and
No, they
I
don't.
looked at her. Part of the Sly family has come from England.
No, they don't. We have no idea where they're from. They're stuck
They're
in
from heaven.
1641 in Massachusetts, and I can't find the ship they've come over on. So everybody thinks they're from England, but I can't find anything in England saying they are. They could actually be from Germany. So whenever he tells everybody they're from England, I just have to laugh and think, no, they're not.
Well, that's what a wife is for. My wife has told me often is to keep their husband on the straight and narrow, so you're doing a good job.
Right.
The name Annette, where did that come from?
A coloring book.
Coloring book.
My mom had me 2 months early, and they didn't have a name picked out because they weren't expecting me to come early. And my siblings, my sisters, were on the floor coloring in an Annette Funicello coloring book. And she said, yep, that works. So I got named Annette.
After Annette
Well, they
Funicello.
didn't think I was going to live. So it didn't really matter what my name was because I was 2 months premature. I was in a tiny hospital 52 years ago in a little, seriously, it was like a one-room hospital, and there was a preemie baby that was bleeding internally. My mom was about to die because they didn't know what was wrong with her, and she was bleeding internally. And so the doctors were trying to save my mom, and they figured, you know, if the baby makes it, that's good too. And the doctor, later after they stopped my mom from bleeding to death, they created some little tiny tubes to give me a blood transfusion, and they didn't have the blood type, so the doctor actually transfused me himself, and they gave me a name and a blessing, a priesthood blessing in the hospital. And shortly thereafter, I started to rally around, stop bleeding, and starting to gain weight, and I made it. My mom made it, and I know it's because of the priesthood.
Where did you grow up? Where was this?
Rangeley, Colorado. It's a little teeny tiny town. Not so much now. Maybe there's 2,000 people in it now. It'll go off and on with an oil boom. Sometimes it'll get really, really big, and most of the time it's really small. But it was a little county hospital, and the doctor was not LDS. And so he likes to joke that at one point I was baptized Catholic. They weren't sure I was going to make it, and that they couldn't find my dad. So they were going to make sure I was going to get to heaven, and that he had whiskey running through his blood, and that's what saved me, was the whiskey, not the priesthood blessing.
So he actually transfused his blood into.
Yeah.
Well, whiskey's good for some things, isn't it?
Saved me. I think it was the priesthood. I shouldn't joke. I really do.
Well, I think God has a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's up there laughing at us for how stupid we are.
Yeah.
What did you do for a living?
I spent the majority of my life, I retired from the Air Force.
What did you do in the Air
After
Force?
26 years. I did, initially I was enlisted as security police. They had initially at the time had the biggest bonus, and there was a reason for that. But I went in and had a great experience. We were sent our first assignment shortly after we were married. They sent us to South Dakota, Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota, near Rapid City. Beautiful little city there, and we spent 5 years there, and I separated to finish school. And graduated school at Idaho State University, and then went back into the Air Force in the Nurse Corps, and spent the remainder of my career in the Air Force as a registered nurse in the Nurse Corps.
So you're a nurse.
I am.
Did they make you wear that little funny cap the nurses used to wear?
No, in fact, when we just would wear that, depending on the job we were doing. If we were in the hospital, we would wear scrubs. If we were out in the field, we'd wear our BDUs, we call them, or our battle dress uniform, and then we would wear that. Or if we were on like a flight or a mission, by flight, we'd wear a flight suit.
So a nurse in the military is different from a medic, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they have medics, and they have their responsibilities. Great training, very good. They just do a great job. So we have the medics, and then we have a registered nurse, and then we have the physicians, all working together on behalf of the patients.
He spent the first part of his medical as like medical surge, where they would do surgeries and he would take care of the patients after. And then a couple of years in, they asked him to be a neonatal intensive care nurse, where he does the preemie babies. So he had a different life than even most of the nurses in the Air Force, because they would deploy to wherever they needed them to go. But the NICU nurses, they only stayed in certain hospitals that had the ability to take care of the premature babies. So where we went was dependent on where that NICU was.
Yeah.
And your career was?
Most of the time, family history. I didn't really work. I was very blessed that my husband was able to take care of us, so I was home to take care of our children. At one point, I did daycare when we lived in South Dakota, so I could be with our children. And then once we got to Texas, I worked for USAA as a computer troubleshooter for a couple of years. And then after we were done with that, we went to Okinawa, Japan. I didn't work in Japan. It was really difficult for the spouses to get a job over there. So my branch president called me as a family history consultant, so I have been doing that ever since.
For how long?
Oh, goodness.
So it would have
15 years?
Yeah.
A long time. Because I started out in Texas learning how to do it and helping people. I'd go in their homes, teach them how to get started doing their family history, finding their ancestors, getting them set to take to the temple, which was so exciting when they would see somebody that had never had temple work done, and they're like, and their face just glows because they're so excited they get to take that person through the temple.
What did you do after the Air Force?
Well, I just retired or from the Air Force anyway. That was in 2011. So I came right from the Air Force. We knew we'd be coming back out west. We wanted to be back out home, come back home. And so we came here to South Dakota, and I will now work at Dixie Regional Medical Center.
We live in St. George, honey. You said South Dakota.
Well, yeah,
We're
back
here
out
in St.
west.
George.
Well, we knew we'd be moving back out west, and so we had a sister who went to college here years back, and we were in the cold quite a bit, and several assignments, and we figured we'd want the little warmer weather, and it was a great location. We loved St. George, and we moved out here in 2011. And then I worked for Intermountain Healthcare as a registered nurse in the neonatal intensive care unit. And I work a few days a week.
They let you work whenever you want to?
Well, I have kind of a schedule. A few days we get a schedule put together, and I come in on those nights.
Tell me a little bit about your parents.
Okay, my mother passed away about 7 years ago. My mother and father, they met when they were in Mississippi, and they met and married. I think my mother just turned 18. My father's probably just turned 19, and they met and married. And my mother grew up Methodist. In fact, her grandfather was a Methodist minister, and she grew up Methodist. Met my father, and through him, she joined the church, and we were.
Was he a member of the church?
He was, and she had passed. So they had eight children, and I was number 2, and they were just great parents.
What did your father do for a living?
Well, he did off and on. At times he'd work for the state where we worked. He had his own investigations business for a little while. He graduated from BYU. It's where he went to school, and
Then went back to Mississippi?
and then at times we go back to Mississippi.
Or Salt Lake. They'd spend some time in Salt Lake or Mississippi.
And then we went back up to Sandy, where I went through high school. But we moved around quite a bit with different jobs. But he still lives, and he lives in Arizona.
What part of Arizona?
Queen Creek area. It's
Queen
outside
Creek, the
outside
center of the known
Mason.
world.
Mm-hmm.
We have a daughter that lives in Queen Creek. See how small of a world it is?
Yes.
He's still alive.
He is. Yes.
How old would he be?
Well, he's be 71.
71.
Yep.
Real young guy. Tell me about your parents.
They met my mom was from Roosevelt, or Monarch, Utah. My dad was from Jensen. They met at a dance.
These dances are killers.
I know. She waited for him on his mission.
Where
and
did he
they
go?
Southwest?
No, it was the Indian mission, but I can't remember. I know he spent a lot of time with the Apache Indians. That was a long time ago, where it was a really huge area, and they rode donkeys instead of drove cars or horses,
What a
whatever
fun
they could
deal.
get, or walk. He said it was quite an interesting mission, so he enjoyed that. They came back and were married in the Salt Lake Temple. I'm not sure how quick. I think he said something like 2 weeks after his mission, they were married in the Salt Lake Temple. And I have a brother and
He
2
beat me
sisters.
then.
He did. Brother and 2 sisters. And like I said, we grew up in Rangeley, Colorado, and I didn't move until I went to college in Provo. And then I met my husband. I met Michael.
What did your father do for a living?
He spent a lot of time on the oil rigs, and then they had to have a water treatment plant that would shoot the water back into the ground after they took the oil out. He was the one that, with about 3 other men, helped to manage that plant. They would do different
Chevron, right?
shifts for Chevron Oil.
Oil man, huh? I always wanted to meet a rich oil man.
Well,
Is he still living?
he is. He's 87, and my mom's 85. Or 86 and 84.
And where are they now?
Well, 6 months out of the year, they winter here in St. George. So I get to spend time with them, which is wonderful, because when we were married, I didn't get to see them very often. So I love that they're here in St. George, and the other half they're in Jensen, Utah. So,
Well, some former mayor of St. George said you either live here or you're going to live here, so I guess
that's
he's
an
right.
awesome idea.
When my wife and I were thinking about retirement, she wanted to retire to St. George, so. Happy wife, happy life. Children, do you have any children?
Uh-huh. We have our oldest son, Brian, who's married to his wife, Amy. They have a cute little daughter named Miriam. She's about 13 months. We have a son and daughter-in-law who live here in St. George, literally like a street over, so we get to see our grandbabies a lot. His name is Daniel, hers is Melissa. And they have twin boys who are
Twins?
2. And
Are
a
they
baby
identical?
who's 6 months. No, they're not.
Oh.
Well, we don't think they're identical. Everyone else thinks they look a lot alike, but they're just cute. And then their brand new baby, well, Neil's about 6.5 months old now, so she's got 3 kids under 2.
And we have a daughter who's.
And then our daughter who
staying
lives
us.
with us, her name's Rebecca. She's a waitress at Olive Garden.
Here in
Absolutely
town?
loves it. Mm-hmm.
And our oldest son, he lives in Kingman, Arizona, so he and
Okay,
his wife.
Brian's in Kingman.
Kingman?
And then our other son and daughter are here.
No one lives in Kingman.
Well, they're not going to be there, I don't think, much longer. They agree with you.
We're on our way to Arizona on Thursday of this week for a grandson's graduation in Queen Creek.
Uh-huh.
And we're going through Kingman to stop there and visit a very good friend of ours who lives there. When I say nobody, she'd resent that if I said she was nobody, but you know what I'm talking
Yes.
about.
Yes.
Really a small world. What do you do for fun?
I think life is fun every day, so
I play with our grandbabies. I
Yeah.
cook a lot, feed a lot of people. That I think is fun. We take walks.
I think together I enjoy a little bit of fishing, and when I get that opportunity, and we like traveling, going
Going
to
to
the
the temple.
outdoors.
We love going to the
I
temple.
love going to the temple, and I think with that, with with our schedule and everything, we try to fit it in where we can.
Did you tell me you were
He's a bishop.
bishop?
I am.
Tell me about being a bishop.
It's a wonderful service to give. It's, boy, I would say it's an honor, and it's just a privilege, and just what a wonderful service. And I can see the Lord's wisdom in the organization there of His church and kingdom to have men called as bishops. And so it's been a privilege.
And we have an amazing stake president that he serves under, so that makes it much easier.
Who was that?
So his name is Bruce Doty, President Bruce Doty.
President Doty,
He's amazing. So that makes being a bishop much easier for him.
yeah.
What's the hardest part about being a bishop?
Well, wow, hardest part. I think one of the challenges is making sure, time management and prioritizing and learning to be a good delegator and learning to just organization. Because the other, to me, I just love doing all the other parts, sitting and visiting and counseling with and spend time with the youth, and just all those things are such a wonderful, just makes it all worthwhile. But I think that would be the challenges, just,
There's an
the
old
management.
adage that the true definition of a Mormon is someone who is either going to, attending, or coming from a meeting. Is there any truth to the rumor that they're going to cut the block to 2 hours?
Have not heard that.
You haven't heard that rumor?
I have not heard that.
On April 1st, before conference, there was a rumor going around on the internet that they were going to announce in conference that this was on April Fool's Day, of course.
Yes, there were some things that came out then that actually we
I
did. We
I was
talked
on
about.
Facebook and I said, honey, they're going to change the block. And he said, I don't see how they can, but if they do, we'll support the prophet.
Well, and I think the big thing was, we also said, it's April Fool's, honey. They always throw things out there, so don't.
But then his last statement said, is if they do, we'll support the prophet. So I thought that was
Well, in the old
awesome.
days, they used to have everything on different days. Primary on one day, Relief Society on one day, Mutual on one day, all different days, and they'd have Sunday school and priesthood meeting and sacrament meeting on Sunday, and so it was kind of spread out. So the 2-hour block is a non-starter, right?
I've heard nothing, so I don't know anything to that.
My wife volunteers on Tuesdays to sew quilts with some of the other group in our homeowners association. And last week, I think, they were still talking about this rumor. And at church Sunday, they were talking about it.
Yeah, I personally, I've heard nothing, so.
Well, it's a rumor. What advice would you give young people today?
You want me to start? I would love to. I think when we see youth, a lot of the struggles and challenges, they're up against a lot today. There is so much.
It's a different world today.
Oh, different world. And I'm amazed at them. So they're just so amazing to deal with and handle so much around them. But with that being said, there's a lot of things to trip them up and to get them off course. So I think staying close to their parents, staying close to the church and seminary is a wonderful tool. So I think staying close and holding firm to the rod blesses them in all aspects of their life. So if they will do that, they will find they will be blessed in so many areas of their life. But there's a lot of things to trip them up and to get them off on different paths. So they must, there's certain age groups we begin to see some who do start making, as they become teenagers, it's so much easier where they can make choices and head down other paths. And so doing those little things
Do
is
the little
important.
things.
Yeah.
I think they should get outside and talk to each other. Stop texting to each other. When they're sitting right beside each other and texting, I think they're losing the ability to talk to each other and the social things that they need to know because they're so busy on technology. They play video games together in their own homes. They're not even, they're talking to each other over the computer, but they don't. How do you form a relationship to get married and find your spouse when you're spending so much time with technology? Get out, go hiking, do something fun and talk face to face. Get away from the distractions. Then again, I have to say my Kindle's my favorite. Sorry. I love my Kindle.
Well, there is a lot of good that can be done. Tonight we're going to participate with the youth in a broadcast with Elder and Sister Bednar. So that should be a wonderful use of media. So there's a lot of good
There
with
is
media
good.
and family history, genealogy, but it can, as Annette said, be
Just
such
swamp 'em.
a distraction and just occupy time and just.
Well, when I was growing up, we didn't even have TV. We had an old radio, and we thought we were deprived, but we were actually blessed, I think.
Yes.
But it's interesting.
But then again, the Lord has said that He's going to hasten the work, and He has made all these wonderful tools for us to be able to hasten the work and to do what He needs us to do. So,
You didn't say much about your siblings, your brothers, sisters.
mine were much older than me. They were pretty much out of the house by the time I came along. And so my brother is amazing with genealogy, and he's always there if I want to call him on the phone and ask him a question. He's the one that has created a website for people to go to, and he's done videos on how to use Family Search. So He's amazing with that, and I
What's the
absolutely
video,
love it.
the site, do you know, the website?
I find it on the internet when I type in how to use Family Search. and
How to
it's-
use Family Search.
It's just on Google, and then it pops up as one of the 3 sites, and his is like the learning curriculum, and he's got probably over 100 videos.
What is his name?
Leland Moon. He worked as a missionary in Salt Lake for the church in the Family History Library.
And
He
his
and
last
wife.
name is Moon?
Mhm.
Sly and Moon?
I know. That's why I asked him his last name, because they gave me a dickens of a time over my last name growing up. And I thought, I am not going to do that to my kids. But no, he's incredible. My older sister lives in Rigby, Idaho. She's a retired registered nurse. And my other sister lives in West Valley with her family, and she helps with her grandbaby. So, and you have so many siblings.
Yeah, a lot of my families, like I said, I was the second of 8, and they live. Most of them are in the West, in Arizona.
Most
Several
of them in Arizona.
Most of them in Arizona, in Queen Creek area, and then I have another brother who lives in Washington State, and I think the others, and then us. Most of the others live in Arizona. I have to check with my wife. See what the latest.
One of them's a truck driver, but they live in Benson, Arizona, but they have a route between Phoenix and Denver, Colorado, and some parts of Salt Lake where they drive truck. He and his wife are a team partner, and they have a great time.
Togetherness.
They do, yeah, they have a great time together.
Well, that's the most important thing. I noticed that you've held hands during this whole interview.
Yes.
That's what I like to see, you young kids holding hands. We've got 1 minute left. What's your final word?
My final word, I think we're excited for the future. We don't know what all lies ahead, but we're excited to it. We'll do it together. We'll go together, and we're just looking forward to what lies ahead.
We love the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and are so thankful every day that we're members, and just follow the prophet.
If you could summarize the gospel in one word, what would it be?
I would say Jesus Christ. If I had, that'd be 2 words, but
That's okay.
that would be that sums up everything
I wouldn't
that
be
we
here
do.
without it. Without the priesthood blessing that I received when I was born, I wouldn't be here. So to me, it's everything.
Well, thank you very much. We've been talking with Michael and Annette Sly, who have famous names after famous people, and they're very wonderful people, as you can tell from the interview. This is Lane Ronnow from the campus of Dixie State University. Thanks for being with us.